I'd like to call the Finance, Ways and Means Committee to order for October the 28th, 2025. Madam Clerk, please take the roll. Just turn the mirror down.
Representatives Baum, Boyd, Camper, Capley, Chisholm, Cochran, Crawford, Faison, Freeman, Gant, Garrett, Gillespie, Grills, Hale, Hawk, Hicks of Washington, Halsey, Lambert, Love, Miller, Moody, Parkinson, Reeves, Shaw, Sparks, Vaughn, Williams, Zachary, Chairman Hicks,
Here.
you have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. Members, are there any personal orders before we begin? Hearing none and seeing none. So certainly appreciate everyone being here for this week of budget hearings. And I have been asked several times, so exactly what are we going to be looking at as we enter into this week? And so I'm happy to kind of lay that out for everyone. And so the thing that we're going to be doing, there's three things that we're kind of going to focus on that the departments will be prepared for. And number one, it's going to be first and foremost to examine the taxpayer dollars, how they have been utilized, how they have been spent. So we're certainly going to be looking forward to talking about that, not only for the current fiscal year, but even a couple years back. We're going to look at how we've been utilizing those funds. Also, we're going to be asking the departments to talk about grant administration, also talking about some of the capital improvements, department programs. So that's going to be some of the things that they're going to have an opportunity to tell us some of the implementation, some of the things that they've been working on for really the past couple years, and certainly including this year's as well. And then finally, we're going to be looking at opportunities for greater efficiencies across state government. And we should always be trying to do that. And so that's really the major focus of this week will be to be doing those three items right there. So are there any questions as we get ready to move forward with our first presenter? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll ask our first group. It's going to be the Department of Finance and Administration. We are honored to have our commissioner, Mr. Jim Bryson, and his staff. And if they'll just make their way up and just refresh everyone's memory, if you would, as you come up, be sure your microphone is on before you begin to speak. Please identify yourself each time you speak for the record. And committee, as you hear the presentation, the opening remarks, if you'd like to be on the list to ask any questions, please do so. Just make sure that you get our attention up here so that we can put you on there. But without further ado, Commissioner Bryson, so good to see you. And we'll let you get started. Let me say this before you do, just a reminder that all this material is on the dashboard, so you should be able to pull that up and to see that. And if you can't, let us know. We'll make sure that you do have access to it. So without further ado now, Commissioner Bryson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized. Let me do this. Without objection, we're going to go out of session. We'll get back in the flow of things. Now, for the third time, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. Appreciate you and the committee inviting us. As you stated, we're going to make it grants, capital improvements established since FY20, as well as federal COVID funds. The committee has also asked us to look at the Tennessee economy and its impact on our upcoming budget. So something a little special that we will also provide today. We're glad to do both of those. Real quick, these are broad mandates, so I want to give you a little sense of FNA. FNA is a department that is tasked with performing many functions that are foundational to state government. FNA is responsible for the accounting in every state department and agency. FNA accounting has received the highest award for government accounting for exactly 44 years. FNA also manages the state budget, as well as a vast majority of the technology and networks deployed across this 40,000 person enterprise. FNA manages 3 health insurance pools for state employees, local government employees, and teachers, 330,000 Tennesseans in all. Lesser known but equally important, FNA investigates and arrests people committing TennCare fraud, saving untold amounts of TennCare dollars annually. FNA also manages the data for state agencies and develops evidence to improve the effectiveness of many state programs. FNA manages all criminal justice grants that are distributed to every corner of the state through its Office of Criminal Justice Programs. FNA is truly a fabulous and awesome department with some of the best, most talented employees I have ever met who are dedicated to the ever-improving operation of state government. It's truly an honor and a privilege to work alongside them. I have a few of these fabulous and awesome people with me today, and I will introduce them. I have beside me Dave Thurman, Director of the State Budget. Next to him over there is Eugene Newbert, who is Deputy Commissioner of the Department, and Kristen Darby, who is our new state CIO. If you haven't met her, you're going to enjoy getting to know her. She's fabulous. And then also someone who is familiar to all of you, Jennifer Brinkman, our Director of Office of Criminal Justice Programs. We will begin with your request about grants, programs, and COVID dollars, and move on to the economy and the budget, and then answer whatever questions that you may have. At this time, I'll turn the podium over to Eugene Newbert, Deputy Commissioner for the department.
Gotcha.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks for the opportunity to present. Over the past several years, Tennessee has faced challenges unlike any in our history. We've seen a global pandemic. We've had economic uncertainty. Yet through it all, our state has emerged stronger. The Department of Finance and Administration has worked to turn short-term relief into long-term resilience, investing in our people, our communities, and our infrastructure. Today, I'll provide a brief overview of how we've leveraged federal COVID relief dollars from both the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan to stabilize not just Tennessee in the short term in a crisis, but to build lasting capacity for years ahead. Then Kristen's going to talk a little about how we've leveraged our state dollars to invest in technology infrastructure that supports our agencies, as well as the people we serve. And then Jennifer will talk about how we leverage state and federal dollars in providing grants to make Tennessee communities safer. Tennessee took a two-phased approach with our federal relief funds. We focused on stabilizing families, schools, and essential services with the CARES Act, which was fully expended by 2021. Then through the ARPA funding, we shifted towards long-term investments that will serve Tennessee for decades. Things like modern infrastructure, broadband access, and health and safety systems. Together, these efforts made our state more resilient and better prepared for challenges. CARES funding was delivered quickly, targeted relief across all 95 counties, providing more than $2.3 billion in total. We kept small businesses open with over $350 million distributed to nearly 29,000 employers. We closed the digital divide, providing $51 million in broadband expansion, connecting 55,000 previously unserved Tennesseans. Education and healthcare were top priorities. $90 million were used to keep students learning safely. $52 million supported hospital staffing and emergency response. Local governments received $115 million to sustain vital services, and $25 million revitalized our tourism industry, which helped Tennessee's economy rebound faster than most states. With the American Rescue Plan, we invested $3.7 billion to build long-term capacity. This includes things like $1.3 billion in water and sewer upgrades, through over 1,200 projects across the states that are providing access and improved reliability. Another $500 million expanded broadband and digital government, while $950 million strengthened our health and mental health systems statewide. We also invested in key industries like tourism, agriculture, and the arts to continue to drive economic growth in Tennessee. These projects don't just meet today's needs, they should prepare Tennessee for the next generation. Through the leadership of the FSAG, of the Financial Stimulus Accountability Group led by the governor and and careful stewardship of these federal funds, Tennessee didn't just weather the storm, we built a stronger foundation for our future. From stabilizing communities in crisis to modernizing the infrastructure that will serve future generations, these investments reflect a legacy of resilience, equity, and opportunity. The state turned an unprecedented national crisis into lasting progress, strengthening our economy, expanding access to essential services, and improving the quality of life for every Tennessean. Through responsible management, transparency, and forward-looking investments, we've built the groundwork for a more resilient, connected, and prosperous Tennessee, one that will continue to serve our people well into the future. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kristen to talk about our technology infrastructure.
Good morning. I'm Kristen Darby, Chief Information Officer of Strategic Technology Solutions, also referred to as STS. I had the privilege of joining the state and STS on March 31st of this year. Although I was not part of the organization for much of the timeline that will be covered here today, I am honored to share the significant accomplishments of STS that was achieved through both yours and Governor Lee's support. To begin, I'm sharing a brief overview of some of STS's most significant accomplishments in modernizing IT. Cybersecurity partnerships with local governments is a primary focus. Since fiscal year 2022, the state has awarded over $1 billion to local governments for cybersecurity that has been applied to assessments, awareness training, and funding cybersecurity tools and licenses for local government employees. The MyTen app is the mobile app that lets Tennesseans get what they need from the government all in one place. There are currently 87 state services that are digitally available 24/7, 365 days a year on a secure and private platform. Cloud enablement. We have 250 applications that have been migrated, which represents approximately 60% of our eligible applications across our portfolio. For disaster recovery support, we have unfortunately in Tennessee seen our share of natural disasters and major events over the last 5 years. STS is the partner that helps the state keep working through these disasters, and it's a commitment that the team takes very seriously. In the AI governance and enablement area, this is certainly an area of evolving focus. The state has established an AI advisory council, and the ISC has passed an enterprise AI policy. We have established an AI governance process to ensure AI is being responsibly implemented across the state. STS has worked with our agency partners to successfully implement many mission-critical applications that our employees and citizens use daily. This is a list that you can refer to have some of these highlighted accomplishments. The state of Tennessee has seen significant transformation in IT since FY 2020. Tennessee has greatly strengthened cybersecurity to better protect citizen data and keep government services safe and reliable. STS has delivered a number of significant end-user services aimed at improving how citizens and state employees interact with government services. An example of this is the focus that was put on business process automation that deployed approximately 145 automations across 25 departments, saving over 114,000 hours of manual work. Cloud computing migrations have continued, delivering greater reliability, scalability, and flexibility to the state. Tennessee has also advanced our AI enablement and governance. All of this was accomplished with the net change in headcounts for STS between FY20 and FY25 of a reduction of 74 positions with an overall reduction of 5.6% in headcount. When you look at STS's historical expenditures, it's clear to see that our IT spending has shifted in two major areas, and those categories are provided on the right for you. We are spending more on end user services and support and less on computing services. The primary driver of this is the spending shift is around the transformation of leveraging cloud computing, which results on less spend of physical infrastructure, hardware, software, and migration away from the legacy mainframe. We have also shifted to the SaaS software purchases. So with that, I want to thank you, Chairman, and the members of the committee for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Kristen. Good morning, committee. My name is Jennifer Brinkman, and I am making sure that my slide is right. And I am the director for the Office of Criminal Justice Programs. As a result of our office's leadership in state government in both grant making and project management over the last 5 years, this legislature has entrusted OCJP with an increase in state programming and an oversight of state dollars for several key initiatives. During this same timeframe, OCJP has been collaborating with STS on the development of an innovative grants management system to streamline our grant-making processes. For purposes of this presentation, I will touch on the larger projects that we have overseen. Through the first 2 rounds of violent crime intervention funding, OCJP ensured that local law enforcement had the training and equipment they needed to quickly address violent crime in Tennessee. This included items such as P25 radios that increased the interoperability between law enforcement agencies, digital forensic equipment to process evidence more quickly, and enhanced resources to keep our officers safe while they are on the streets protecting our citizens. With this year's funding, law enforcement agencies serving the 50 zip codes with the highest number of homicides over a 5-year period will receive an infusion of additional state funding to continue to further the state's effort to combat violent crime in our state. This year also, there was an additional funding that was focused on downtown public safety to reduce blight, enhance economic development infrastructure, increase public safety, and reduce crime. The funding for evidence-based programming for local jails, which is a cornerstone to the Reentry Success Act of 2021, has supported more than 1/3 of our local jails, with 28 county jails providing skill enhancement opportunities with this funding. Opportunities include certified vocational programming, mental health and substance abuse programming, and other general life skills and job readiness classes to provide our locally housed offenders with the tools necessary to successfully reenter our communities and to reduce recidivism rates amongst the formerly incarcerated. As you all are aware, federal VOCA funding represents the most significant source of funding for victim services in our state. These federal funds sustain a comprehensive network of providers that ensure essential assistance is available to all crime victims. This funding has fluctuated greatly since 2014, when Tennessee went from receiving about $9 million to almost $68 million in 2018. This year's award is roughly $26 million, so it continues to fluctuate. For FY25 and FY26, this legislature appropriated and passed non-recurring funding in the amount of $13 million and then $20 million to prevent drastic reductions in funding across the victim services fields, providing much-needed crisis services for our victims. The Tennessee Strong Families Crisis Pregnancy Funding provides a safety net for struggling families experiencing an unplanned pregnancy by providing medical services, education, and workforce support, and assistance with essentials such as car seats, childcare, and transportation. These services promote wellness and stability to our most vulnerable family systems and provides a strong foundation for the next generation of Tennesseans. In 2024, $30 million was appropriated to increase the safety of almost 40 of Tennessee's private and public institutions of higher education. OCJP partnered with the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security and required that those applying complete a physical security assessment. This funding has had a profound impact on the safety of our young adults, many of whom have moved away from home for the first time in their lives. Law enforcement communication systems have been upgraded. Campus police dispatch, monitoring, and operations centers have been created or expanded. Interior and exterior doors were improved or hardened, and gates, fences, and railings have been added for campus access and traffic control. OCJP is grateful for the opportunities that have been provided to us to enhance and improve the safety and well-being of our citizens across the state. And we look forward to continuing this work as future opportunities are provided. I'd like to turn it over now to David Thurman for
All right. Good morning. What I'd like to do is really kind of give an overview of really the things that are shaping our thinking right now as we think about the governor's last budget, FY27. But before I do, just kind of want to, as Commissioner Newbert mentioned, the last few years have been challenging. When I kind of highlight the things that we've been facing that have made predicting and forecasting very difficult and very challenging to build a spending framework around. But it's, we've talked about it before. Unprecedented is probably the word that prevails over describing the last 5 years, because there's so many different things that have happened that really have been difficult to think about and really unprecedented. With COVID impact, we had COVID response, right? But while that was happening, we had business interruptions, supply chain interruptions that impacted our ability to buy goods, to get access to goods, that impacted prices, that impacted a lot of things, changed our spending patterns. If you think about what happened during that time frame, we stopped traveling, which is not taxable, but we spent a lot of time on home projects, going to Home Depot, buying products that are taxable. And it impacted our sales tax collections. But the spending patterns just shifted during that time period. And then as we came out of recovery, there was a return to normal that we saw that's still, I think, starting to happen or occurring. And so I'm not really sure what normal looks like, but I think that's kind of to describe it. We're returning to something away from that period to something, to a resetting, if you will. At the same time, we had large infusions of federal dollars. President Trump in his first administration provided COVID response dollars to work through. And then when President Biden came in, he provided also additional dollars for recovery. And so we're still working through those federal dollars, but it impacted spending. It impacted sales tax. And again, it helped facilitate that change in spending patterns that we're still working through. We also had inflation issues that impacted price of goods because of the supply chain scarcity. It also impacted, our sales tax. At the same time, you recall, right before the COVID happened, we had passed legislation. You passed legislation to allow us to tax online sales, was a savior to our tax base, because we captured that change in spending pattern, and it helped us a lot in our revenues. And also, it was part of the reason we had, I would describe it as extraordinary revenue growth during that period, when we actually planned for just the opposite. When it first started happening, we really anticipated this to look more like the 2008 recession, where revenues would fall off the table for a couple of years. And we adjusted and planned for that way, but it really didn't happen that way, which we're certainly thankful, but we didn't. That just highlights how unprecedented this period was in terms of planning and revenue growth, and it really impacted our uncertainty. It impacted our revenues, as I mentioned, and we went from a period during COVID. I would describe it as booming growth that occurred because it was double digit, not normal. But we really weren't sure how much of that was going to be recurring because of the spending patterns that changed. And so we were cautious in how to think about that. And I'll show you what that looked like. The last several years, as we start to return to normal, we were seeing slower revenue growth, something more normal. But we also made some significant changes to our tax base, which impacted our flat growth that we have seen in the last 2 or 3 years. And if you recall, I think something that we did that I don't think other states did is that as we had that booming growth, what we did not do was program it all into recurring expenditures when we saw it. We did spend it. We programmed it all into and put it all to work, but we used a lot of it for non-recurring dollars, waiting to see how the economy played out, how much of that was actually recurring and how much was not. But it also gave us a cushion should things start to turn negative. But what we did was we used those dollars on non-recurring things and we're able to make, I would say, significant investments that we couldn't normally make with our budget. And just to point out, and we're still doing this, but when we first started recognizing the accelerated growth in our revenues, we brag about our structural balance, right? Which means we match up recurring and non-recurring with revenues and expenditures. But what we did when we spent that, we actually spent recurring money on non-recurring expenditures. So we were kind of the opposite of, we're still structurally balanced, but it was just something we'd never done before. When we first started seeing this, we spent $234 million of recurring dollars on non-recurring things. And that gave us a little bit of a cushion. And then revenues accelerated. In the next couple of years, we actually spent $1.3 billion of recurring dollars on non-recurring things. If you think about some of the large things we did, I'll show you a slide in a second. But and then next year is even more. We had $2.6 billion of recurring that was spent on non-recurring, which allowed us to make significant investments on infrastructure and things that were kind of unprecedented magnitude. And as revenue started to slow, it's still growth, but just slower growth, we were able to layer in some of that previously collected recurring revenue to add to our recurring expenditures. So it gave us a little bit of a cushion and allow us to slowly grow the budget. So the budget that you passed last year, we spent $491 of recurring on non-recurring. So that revenue is going to be available for us in the next budget for 27 for either recurring or non-recurring. And that's, we're still in the planning process to think about it, but we still have that cushion should things slow. Here's a slide that just highlights some of the large investments that we're able to make because of the way we had structured that budget. Again, spending recurring money on non-recurring things, it actually allowed us to spend that money more than once, if you think about it. And so we were able to make significant investments in transportation. We had a year when we spent $3.3 billion for transportation, and then another $1 billion last year. We've had over $7 billion in our capital, both for general fund and general government and higher education. We also put $1 billion in our TCATs. And I won't go through the entire list, but you can see that. I would point out that we made large one-time deposits in our pension program and our OPEB liability. So that helped to address a significant our liabilities. But also what that did was by making those non-recurring investments, it lowered our recurring contributions based on actuarial study, which is something a lot of states did, but I think something we can certainly brag about. I won't go through the entire list, but again, you can see that we were able to do this and really without any debt. These things we would normally do with a normal budget. We'd have to talk to you about some borrowing to do some of these things, but we really didn't have to. I don't know why it's off a little bit. Just talking about the economy as we start to think about it, and we have heard from some economists already, just trying to understand how they're thinking about it. And what we're hearing is that there are continued signs of the economy returning to normal, and that means a more moderate growth pace. Obviously, we couldn't continue at the rate we were at, and so we're moving from a period of booming growth to a period of what I would call more normal growth. I'm not sure I know what normal is, but something less than what we've seen. The fundamentals, I would say, of the economy are still really good. So there's nothing that's really out there that says, clearly this is a problem. I think I would even point to our Tennessee's GDP, which is above the national average. And if you look at compare us to some of the other states that have the AAA, we are probably in the top three. So we are, from that standpoint, the fundamentals of our economy are really good. There is still always a risk of recession. We hear that often. And again, it's because of that uncertainty of kind of where we're headed and the trends. The labor market, I think, is probably the best indicator at this point of showing signs of cooling. And I have a slide that'll show you what that looks like. But as you know, based on our economy, we are very dependent upon sales tax and consumer spending. So consumer spending is certainly the key. And that is impacted by labor. So when we hear about slowing labor, that makes us raise a flag of concern about outlook. Here's a slide that was shared to us last month from an economist at Moody's, and it really just shows you the deceleration that's occurring throughout the country on job growth, with the Midwest kind of leading that slowing. So it shows that it's, not just a regional thing, but there is some slowing that is occurring. For Tennessee specifically, this shows you employment. And again, think about the revenues I showed earlier with the booming growth. It kind of matches with what we saw with the labor market. And then recently you can see there is slowing in growth. Still growth, but it's slowing growth. And again, that impacts consumer spending, which impacts sales tax collections, which is always on our mind. If you think about our taxes year to date, the budget that we have reflects slow growth of a little over around 2%. Year to date, we are collecting right at where we were this time last year. We're a little positive growth, but I would say we're right at where we were this time last year. And again, it's not a concern. It's just that we're right at estimate. And so something that we're watching. So right now we're in the process of developing and starting to think about the 27 budget. So we're taking all the information that we've heard and trying to understand what that may mean and trying to build a spending framework around that. So we haven't had the funding board yet. We'll meet in November. So we really depended upon them to kind of help us think through the revenue range. But without that, we're talking with the governor and his staff about how to think about the budget and what the funding opportunities may look like, again, without that information yet. So what we're thinking, I guess, and hearing is that the underlying economy is good, right? So that's good. And we know that there's an effort to lower interest rates, which would be a positive to growth and economic growth. And we think tax revenues will start to continue that return to a normal growth pattern. Again, I don't know what that means, but I think it's something less than what we've seen. So a slowing growth, still growth, but something less than what we've seen. We're still trying to understand the impact of tariffs and how that may impact prices, how that will impact spending, and spending impacts our revenues. The slowing labor market certainly has an impact on our consumer spending, as I mentioned. And then the impact of federal cuts, not really the shutdown, but more the longer term cuts that are being contemplated and how that would impact us and how we would want to think about that. So without having the funding board meet yet and kind of develop their range, when we're thinking about the FY27, we're thinking that growth rates would be something a little bit slower than what we've seen before in the previous past. So again, thinking through FY27, again, assuming some slowing revenue growth. And I don't, for reference, I think if you think of 1% revenue growth, it's about $180 million. So if you're thinking, 2%, 3%, you can multiply that 180 by that to think about how much revenue we may have. Again, without funding board weighing in yet. When we're developing the budget and looking at all the agency requests, we try to understand there are certain things that we do that I would consider normal cost of government, things that we would fund to continue. And you think about the TISA formula, you think about TennCare, you think about a lot of what we do is through contracts and multi-year contracts that have automatic inflators. So we need to take that into account, and that's kind of an automatic thing that we would want to fund because we've already obligated ourselves to that contract. And then, of course, we'd want to do something for state employees and benefits. And I would kind of consider those the have-tos as we think about building the next budget, and those have a cost. If we have slower growth, which seems to make sense, then it's also seems to make sense. A lot of the things I just mentioned of the normal cost of government could eat up a lion's share of that normal growth. Until we kind of put those together, that's kind of how we're thinking about it. We also know as part of our process, we want to fix base issues to the extent that we can. This is the governor's last budget and the handoff budget. We want to make sure that the base is in a good place and we haven't left any holes of commitments or programs that are already operational. So we know right now that with SNAP, there's changes, and the immediate change is in SNAP administration with the change in the funding mix. And so that's something that we will want to address in our next budget request. We also know, I think this is good news, bad news. The good news is our personal income is up relative to other states. The bad news is that impacts the federal match that we pay for our Medicaid program. And so that we know that that's going to go, our state match is going to go up to fund the cost of that program. And so that's something that I would consider a base issue that we will need to address in the next budget. So those are kind of things that are shaping our thinking. We're still, next 2 months are very critical to our development. Planning board needs to meet. We're working through agency requests and trying to match that up and work through those decisions with the governor. And we'll kind of shape our thinking and what the work we're going to do in the next few months. Last slide is really just a brief commercial as a reminder. Tennessee is one of the best managed states in the U.S. and we have where we're just one of 14 states that have the highest bond rating from the 3 large bond rating agencies. So that means we're doing something right. And I like to kind of highlight the things that we hear that we're doing right, just to kind of recognize that. So we know that, of course, our budget is balanced, or it's required. But again, these are things that other states may not do as often as we do. We take it the next step. We don't just balance our budget, but we are structurally balanced. And again, that's making sure we match up our recurring and non-recurring on revenues and expenditures. When we think about spending and revenues, we try and think of that in a cautious, conservative manner. So when we think about expenses, we kind of tend toward the higher end cost exposure, and we think about revenues, we try and go on the lower end, and hopefully that'll come together and we don't over budget. And so if you think about, we tried to push the limit on revenue estimates, it'll work probably a year or two, but if you do that year after year after year, it'll catch up with you. And so we try not to do that. We also like our reserves, and we have continued to build those up. Our rainy day fund is now a little over 9% of our revenues, and it's something that, again, other states don't do. Don't do. We've also fully funded our pension since 1972. Definitely say other states have not done that, right? Something to brag about. But we also addressed our OPEB liability, which is fairly new to our balance sheet. It's something we've tackled and attacked pre-COVID, but also in an accelerated way during COVID with our cash. Overall, we have a very low debt burden. So we have, and because of where we found ourselves in cash, we were able to do a lot of things without debt. Doesn't mean we don't like debt, but it's just that we didn't need it in the last few years, and it's still a tool to us. But it would take so much to change our debt burden if we did issue debt, and then it would take a lot to change our ranking. So we have a lot. It's a tool for us, and I think it's something that is available to us, and if we need to. Our road program, as you know, we don't issue debt. Since 1977, we stopped doing that, and we are a pay-as-you-go state, which means we have a lot of flexibility to deal with flattening revenues, both from the federal and state level. Something other states have not done. They've used their federal gas tax to fund their debt service, and so when that comes off the top, they have very little left to do other road projects. And so we're in a much better position, I think, than other states from that standpoint. The last thing I would point out is just on the upper right is that when we have had difficult budgets, difficult economies, we have, and I say the state has a demonstrated, proven record of making those tough decisions to make cuts, to do what we need to do to balance. Again, other states really haven't done that as well. If you think of the 2008 recession, it was a 3-year downturn in revenues, and we made those tough cuts that were necessary to stay in balance or to get us into balance. In 2014, we had a revenue shortfall, and we came back and asked you to make some cuts. And then the 2020 pandemic, again, when we rolled out a budget and realized that revenues were in jeopardy of supporting the budget that we proposed, and peeled back that fairly quickly, and you guys supported us and helped us to think through that. And so I think that's something, again, other states have not done that we can really brag about. I won't go through the entire list, but just to let you know, this is kind of a commercial on something that we all should be proud of and brag about as we think about our fiscal resources. So let me stop there and see what questions.
All right, thank you very much. Certainly appreciate that slide, but the third slide from the end. I really appreciated just reminding everyone that it is going to be a tight budget year coming up. And so to keep that in mind. But members, let me just remind you of one thing. If you haven't signed in, please do so. It just makes it much easier when you do want to be recognized to be able to get your microphone queued up. So please do that. And the other thing is please be very respectful of the time. We're going to try to stay on a timeline here. Be respectful of your colleagues. And so I'll ask you to just ask your pointed question, and I'm going to ask our guest to please just give a pointed answer as well. So that way we can make sure we get everybody taken care of that's going to be on the list. Let's begin with ARPA funds. Deputy Director Newbert, you mentioned those in your presentation. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but as of September 30th, 2025, about 1.58 had actually been spent of ARPA funds. We've got two projects in there that show no expenditures, and that makes me a little bit nervous. One of those is the TDOT's mega site road improvements, and the other one is for the Knox County Forensic Center up there for the health department. And so can you talk a little bit about those funds? Do you anticipate if they can't spend the monies on these two projects, will we reallocate those funds? And then what are some of the main challenges on getting those ARPA funds out with that deadline looming? And I'll just pause there and let you answer.
Sure. Thank you. Great question. So first on those two projects, working with TDOT on the mega site roads, they've already worked with Haywood County. Expenditures are occurring. They just haven't yet passed those along from county to TDOT to bill. Of last communication we got from TDOT, they expect late this calendar year, early next calendar year, they will have fully expended that project. With regard to Knox County, very similar. They're cash flowing a lot of that work in their own budget, and then plan on early to mid 26, basically submitting a bill to just recoup all of those costs from the state from that ARPA project. So those are those two projects specifically. Kind of broader to your question, we are looking at, we'll call it Plan B. So as we think through all of those things that are eligible, whether it's just general state expenditures, we're identifying kind of some fallbacks that we would be able to apply dollars towards late in 26 as we approach that deadline to ensure that we do not give up any of these federal dollars. So rest assured that is our plan, and we will we'll make sure the governor and FSCG leadership know and understand kind of where those fallbacks are, so that if we do see projects that underspend, we'll be able to leverage those dollars fully.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for your presentation. Just a follow-up from Chairman Hicks. I know FSAG met late last year, I guess was the last time, which we reallocated those ARPA dollars, I think, to THDA, some dollars. I guess to Chairman Hicks's point, I'm a little bit concerned, particularly since we've only spent, less than half of the ARPA dollars. They've obviously all been committed. I guess with the deadline looming in October of next year, as somebody who delivers projects, we could talk to Ms. Kristen about how long it takes to deliver an SDS project. It's pretty elongated. My concern is it necessary for FSAG to meet again, look at the people that we've committed dollars to? Because if we did have to reallocate those dollars, the only place we could reallocate those dollars that they could be spent is somebody that we've already given revenues to, because they have a system in place and contracts in place to do that. And so I'm a little bit concerned that maybe we'd miss the opportunity to do that. So if you could speak to that, that would be good.
Yeah, thank you. It's actually a very good question. And one of the things that Deputy Commissioner Newbert did not address, which is why we're where we are right now. And that is because, as he mentioned earlier in his presentation, the ARPA dollars were made as investments, which were typically, most of them, capital investments. And Representative, you in that business, so you kind of know how this works. So there's a lot of design, there's procurement, there's all of these things that go along that don't require much of any spending. And then we begin building, we begin spending the money. So what we anticipate and what we are talking to everyone in this about, we're managing this pretty closely, is about where are you on your spending and where do you anticipate being on your spending, and then tracking them through this process to make sure that these capital expenditures come in time. But that's why it's a back end loaded expenditure system, because they are capital projects. So that's one of the issues. The other issue that you mentioned is we do have, and Deputy Commissioner Newbert has a lot more information than I do, but we do have ways. We do have an expenditure plan if we have monies remaining, and he can explain kind of what we could do that if that is necessary. We are going to begin accelerating reports to FSAG. Right now they're quarterly, and we've discussed at least by the first of the year starting to make those more frequent so that FSAG can stay up to speed with exactly what's going on in the final year of the program. If we need to have a meeting, we will definitely have one without a doubt. So that's where we are right now.
Okay. Just kind of, I guess my concern is that because we haven't met in a long time, there may be new players involved as it relates to that and the expenditure of those dollars. My concern is that, not that we wouldn't be nimble, we would do as good as we could under the circumstances, but I'm certain, based on what you're telling me, that there is a checklist of strategic targets that have to be met in order to expend these funds at a certain date. And you don't have any concern at this time that those people we've committed dollars to are going to be able to meet those targets, so these monies are expended by October of next year.
I wouldn't say there are no concerns, because we are following those projects very, very closely to make sure that any of those that we deem to be at risk, communicating with them on a regular basis, and we're keeping up with it. And if we get to a point where we need to pull those funds, we're prepared to do that, and we will be in communication with FSAG to do so.
Okay.
Chairman Williams?
Thank you. Just a little bit of variance from there. Obviously, the Office of Criminal Justice Program is very important to this committee, obviously to the Tennessee General Assembly. I recognize that the volatility probably for you has been probably unparalleled to any other part of state government. I do know that, through the grants that we issued last year and the years previous, that in issuance of those grants, typically like with ARPA, whenever we have a contract with an entity, that there's a portion that both the entity and the state is able to retain as it relates to the cost in order to deliver those administrative costs as it relates to do that. I can't help but notice that it seems as though through the OCJP is that the percentage that we're retaining to administrate costs, even though we've allocated revenues in order to administer those costs, seems to be at a higher percentage than most of the other programs. I was wondering if you could give me whereas typically it'd be 5%, typically it looks like that we're spending administrative costs in addition to the revenue that we've given, or somewhere around 10%. Could you tell us kind of why those costs are higher as it relates to the administrative costs associated with that? Because one of the things we've invested is the ability to have software or administrative costs that allows us to distribute those funds, and those funds already have a system by which we're distributing them. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that.
Director Brinkman,
Absolutely.
you're recognized.
Thank you. So for our positions that we received, we did not have funding allocated for those, any funding. So we were told to use the funding from the giant pot of money you gave for the positions. So for those, that's what we're using that funding for. What we initially retained was 10% for that, but we are not spending that amount. And the 10% is consistent with what our federal criminal justice grants were allowing. So that's why we landed on the 10% when we were asked. But at this point, we're looking at maybe 1% to 3% for the Violent Crime Intervention Fund. And so we reallocated the funding that we weren't using for the Violent Crime Intervention Fund.
So it sounds like that even though the data might suggest that that administrative cost is much higher, I guess, do you go back through another round of grants in order to reallocate those additional funds that you didn't need for administrative costs, or is that a separate pot, or how does that work?
So actually, for the Violent Crime Intervention Fund, for that first round of funding where we took the 10% originally, we actually over obligated by 7% because we knew that law enforcement agencies were going to end up getting things for less cost and we would have to go out with more funding. So that's how we address that on the front end.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, Deputy Speaker Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll direct these questions. Thank you for your presentation. I'll direct these to Kristen, some technology investment advancement questions for you. I believe you have 18 projects of roughly 10 or more million that are in the portfolio. Can you give us an update on the larger projects, DOC, DCS, AOC, and Edison? Just if these projects are on time, within budget, and is there any concern about completion of these projects?
Director Darby, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yes, happy to do that and appreciate the question. Focusing first on TDOC, the Offender Management System. This is also known as TOMAS 2.2 replacement. That project is progressing, and this is one of the ones that we continue to monitor closely, that's using ARPA funds for completion in Q3 of 2026. So at this point, the spend to date has been $8.5 million, but we are expecting this project to complete within budget. And so it is progressing. ERP replacement for Edison, this is phase 1 that we are in, which is the requirements gathering phase. And with that, we have spent $767,000 to date. That project is in a green status. And as the requirement phase is coming to completion, we will be creating an RFP, which will go out, and we expect that to be released by mid-2026. Moving forward to the Tennessee Department of Children's Services, the Comprehensive Child Welfare Information System, which is also known as CWIS. That project is continuing to progress on track and is expected to deliver fully in October of 2026. Spend to date has been $6.5 million, but we expect to complete within the allocated budget for that delivery date. And then the final project that you asked about is for Administrative Office of the Courts, and that is the new e-filing and case management system. In this particular case, we are also in the RFP phase to select the platform. And so we expect to have that selection by January of 2026. So far, $1.1 million has been spent of the allocated project, but we do expect this phase to complete within the allocated $75 million budget, and the RFP will start to apply to the platform, and then a system integrator will be selected. So that project is in a green status.
Couple more if I may, Chairman.
Deputy Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. Thank you for the details. Very helpful. So how do we prepare as a state? Technology is changing so fast. AI has changed the way we approach every project. And you had mentioned Thomas and others. How do we prepare, and are we even falling behind as long as it takes to implement some of these projects? How are you planning and preparing? And then how are we addressing that once Thomas is completed, then we're already behind and having to look to upgrade?
Director.
Yes, so this is a continuous challenge in the technology field. The pace of AI development and application to existing technology is truly evolving at an exponential rate. From a state perspective, what we have done is focused on developing not only a strategy for AI to start to understand the implementation, but making sure that there is a governance structure and oversight structure in place that starts to align us to ensuring that the architectures that we're implementing stay current, but are also open and flexible so that we have the ability to adapt and evolve as much as possible. In addition to that, we are revisiting requirements. So in particular with CWIS, for example, the TOMAS replacement, we are working with our system implementation partner to start to incorporate different AI use cases that provide additional efficiencies and the ability to automate many of the solutions that will provide better outputs and design for the delivered product.
Last one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that, Director. Last question, close to 200 million in ARPA funds were budgeted for technology projects. I believe the number as of end of September is about 144 million. Is there any concern about spending and utilizing the rest of those resources by the deadline?
So as of last week, STS expects not to spend $66,000 of what is available in the 196 million. So those projects at this point in time, we do all expect to deliver within the ARPA deadline.
Pretty dang close to using it all. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list will be Chairman Baum. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Hicks. And thank you, Commissioner Bryson and your team. I want to ask a question about the ARPA money that FSAG allocates and holds. I guess my question is, do you all ever invest it to earn interest on those funds? It seems like the departments don't hold the funds, so they're not getting interest off that. I was wondering if F&A is.
Well, yes, those are invested and held. We are able to draw those funds down, and they're held in, from an accounting standpoint, in a deferred revenue account. But in essence, it's the general fund, and the interest that is earned is non-recurring dollars, I believe, that y'all are able to allocate.
And the interest doesn't have to be allocated toward particular projects. It just goes into the general fund.
Right,
Okay.
under the federal guidelines, that is correct.
Okay, well, that's good information. And then I'll just close my comments with a little bit of good news, good economic news that comes to mind as we talk about the economy. Last quarter, second quarter, U.S. GDP growth was 3.8%. That's robust. It was projected to be 3.3%, but we beat that estimate. Number two, the stock market closed at an all-time high yesterday. And number three, tariffs. Japan just announced that they are going to invest $550 billion additional dollars in the United States in order to have a 15% tariff instead of a higher tariff. And that's new investment dollars, not that's over and above what they normally invest. $550 billion is a lot of money, so I hope Tennessee's the beneficiary of some of those three pieces of good news. Thank you.
Chairman, next time I think I'll begin with you, if that's okay, and that good news. So, all right, thank you. Next on the list is Representative Freeman. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, can we go back to slide 13? Can we do that quickly? I want to talk a little bit about the appropriations we had this year for victim services. And Commissioner, thank you so much for seeing a need this year and changing and adding money to the budget. And for the members that may not know, most of those programs are funded through a federal program called VOCA. Those dollars have shrunk every year to the point that many nonprofits that rely on that funding to provide services to victims are getting about 15 to 20% of what they used to do. And the commissioner, at the very last minute, added money to the budget to provide these and very important services. And so I just want to flag that for everybody. Thank you personally and publicly, but also acknowledge that we're going to probably need to do that again. And so I hope that this is something that gets included in next year's budget. I know we're not talking about that today, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands how important that work is. These are nonprofits that fundraise in most cases to provide the services, and they need that recurring dollars to know what their budgets are going to be next year. So again, thank you for the important work there.
Thank you, Representative Freeman. Next on the list, Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for the presentation, everybody. Sorry I missed the first part, but you mentioned in your presentation that we are thinking about the impact the DOGE cuts we're going to have on states, and that across all the federal agencies, there will be a reduction in funding. And a lot of it is going to be pushed to the state level to do. So I'm interested to know, what type of planning, strategic planning that we're thinking about, state of Tennessee, to be able to absorb some of those cuts based on the, I think you called it the base, I can't remember the page. 10Care was on there and some others was on there. So I presume we're planning and preparing for this. And I'm curious if we've given instructions to the departments to cut or to increase, or what we're planning to do with the cuts we notice coming from the federal government across all agencies. Have we been thinking about that? What is our strategy going forward with that?
You're recognized.
Okay,
Commissioner.
thank you. Yeah, thank you, Leader Camper. We are monitoring that very closely as far as what we're getting from the federal government. And so we've asked all the departments to send us information that they get from the federal government on on any programs that they have and that type of thing. As you can imagine, there's not a lot coming down right now.
Right.
But we have asked them to just continue to send us information because there's not a way to predict that at this point. So we're getting information from them that we can build into the budget. The two things that we do know that are significant impact are the two that Director Thurman pointed out in his presentation.
Okay, thank you. You also mentioned, Mr. Thurman, that revenues are normalizing, before with the Wayfair decision and all of that, thank God we did what we did. And we were able to, during COVID, see a real big increase in people ordering online, and we were collecting those dollars. And now we are trending downward, if you will, because, revenues are going downward on some of the spending. So as we normalize our revenue coming in, we know that tourism is a big part of it in the state of Tennessee. And we know that our tourism is increasingly going up. We got a lot of people want to be here, a lot of stuff happening. People want to be in Tennessee and Nashville in particular. Do you see that with those growths that the state will begin to invest more in those areas? Like a lot of the rural areas could really benefit from tourism. Are we thinking about trying to increase what you are doing to, really invest in the thing that's creating the growth right now for the state of Tennessee?
Okay. Yeah, if I may.
Commissioner, you're recognized.
Leader Camper, if you don't mind, I'll answer that. It's a little bit of a policy question that you're asking. And last year we put some significant, you all were willing to put significant amount of funding into tourism, recurring funding.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a huge help, and it's going to help all of our counties, but it's going to be particularly helpful in our rural areas to be able to help them to develop tourism attractions. We, as you know, I used to be over in the state parks area. And so I'm very familiar with a lot of these rural areas and what they need from a tourism perspective. And so there are programs that are being worked on by both tourism, state parks, and agriculture with their forestry program and others to be able to help these local areas to develop recreational opportunities, as well as industry that they work with ECD to develop those kinds of businesses that will build their economy and do that going forward. And I think the amount of the money that you all appropriated to tourism last year on a recurring basis is going to be hugely helpful to that effort.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Members, I have no one else on the list. And all right, Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been sitting here listening to all the reports, but my concern is I remember when I would leave Tennessee, I would always know that I was back in Tennessee when I hit the road. Are we going to be able to continue to build our roads fast enough and repair them fast enough by paying as we go? And I know I like that idea, but are we going to be able to sustain that in your opinion, Commissioner?
So it's a good question, and as you know, we have a lot of backlog in our road program that we need to fix. We've put about, I think, $4.3 billion in the last 3 or 4 years into our road program that will be spent over the next 3 to 5 years, and to catch up on some of that backlog, and that's going to be very helpful. We also last year, as you remember, put some recurring funds into our road program and our transportation program for the first time. And so we are looking for ways to continue to build our road fund to catch up on our roads and continue to have the infrastructure in Tennessee that we can all be proud of, as you mentioned, and will also facilitate growth and economic development in our state. How we do that going forward, there's a lot of questions around that, but I can tell you that we have a real interest in trying to fund our transportation program going forward more robustly than we are today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That gives me a chance to give a commercial about talking about the $4.3 billion that we've put non-recurring into transportation over the last 4 budgets. I think we need to go ahead and do that, just $1 billion recurring going forward, and put a little index on there with a sales tax aspect to it, and we'll be just fine. So I think a little commercial there. I will say, and forgive my tardiness coming in to the members and to our commissioner and your team, as I'm listening to the economy of Tennessee, it sounds like we're very robust, and workforce development is always what we're looking for, trying to create taxpayers as opposed to tax consumers. So I really appreciate that. An issue that's hitting home in many of our areas, both rural and urban, is the cost of housing. And as we look at all the positives that we do have in Tennessee, I think that it's necessary for us as a General Assembly, this administration, and the next administration to realize that that is something that is holding us back in terms of having that viable workforce and being capitalist and looking for the private sector. I think there's some things that we need to do to lessen the burden on developers as they go forward in order to help us go through this process. And that's broadly through several different state departments, but as Finance Administration, you kind of help us bridge the gap with all these other departments. But just to put that, 2 things on the radar, both the transportation needs, funding therein, as well as affordable housing and what we need to do going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
All right. Thank you, members. I have no one else on the list, so I do want to say thank you to our guests. Thank you to the Department of Finance and Administration for your presentation and for answering our questions. Thank you all. All right, up next, and I did see Commissioner Strada come in, so we do have the Department of Corrections will be bringing our next presentation. Commissioner, we'll let you begin. Just as a reminder, we will control your microphone up here. So once you see that red light come on, you may begin. Also, members, I'll ask you, please be sure that you have signed in if you haven't already. And with that, Commissioner, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Hicks and members of the committee. I'm Frank Strada, Commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Corrections, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. With me, I have my Chief of Staff, Elizabeth Foy, my Assistant Commissioner, Valerie Murtha, Assistant Commissioner, Heather Stanford, Assistant Commissioner, Gail Finkel, and Assistant Commissioner, Linda Thomas. I want to begin by expressing my appreciation for your continued leadership and support of the department's mission. to operate safe and secure facilities and provide effective community supervision and offer evidence-based programming that prepares individuals for successful reentry. We oversee a system of 10 state-operated facilities and 4 private facilities with over 70,000 individuals across Tennessee in some form of parole or supervision. Our mission touches nearly every community in the state. Give you a little background about myself. I've got 37 years prison experience. I started as a correctional officer in 1988 with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Worked my way up to the assistant director of the Bureau of Prisons in 29 years. Moved on to the privates for about a few years, and then as the deputy director for the Arizona Department of Corrections prior to assuming the role in January of 2023, being appointed by Governor Lee as the commissioner for Tennessee Department of Corrections. And that experience has really helped me provide my and how my vision is for the department and how we run our programs and how we operate our facilities. And, over the past few years, we've implemented some significant strategic investments and enhancements in equipment, transportation, and training across our correctional facilities and in our field offices. These initiatives are targeted approaches designed to improve operational readiness, staff security, staff safety, and institutional security. These include some items as body scanners, metal detectors, mail scanning devices, secure buses, emergency response equipment, just to name a few. And through the intelligence-driven targeted searches, we have been able to reduce the amount of contraband entering our facilities. However, we understand this still remains a challenge for us as well as other correctional agencies across the country. As stewards of the public resources, the department remains committed to maximizing efficiency and ensuring transparency. Since fiscal year 20, we've received over $213 million in federal funding, primarily from the Coronavirus Relief Fund and the American Rescue Plan Act. Of that amount, $201,465,000 came from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which was supported purchases of supplies, materials to reduce virus transmission, as well as payroll and benefits for security and medical staff in our facilities and probation offices in the community. Those federal dollars offset the cost of the state by freeing otherwise allocated state dollars. We continue to make meaningful progress in modernizing administrative systems and leveraging technology to reduce redundancy and enhance reporting accuracy and strengthen our fiscal accountability. Through ARPA funding, the department is currently receiving payments for 2 technology-related grants, which will be completed by December of 2026. In fiscal year 20, the department received ARPA funding for implementation of electronic health records, the EHR system. That grant has about $4.6 million in unspent funding. Although those funds are currently unspent, they are fully obligated and expect to be expended before the grant expiration date. The department has successfully implemented the EHR system in all of our state-run facilities over the past 18 months. The transition from paper records to a digital platform represents a significant step forward in modernizing our EHR systems. Also from the ARPA funding in fiscal year 20, passed through from STS, the department is working on the implementation of the offender management system. That grant was around $34.5 million in unspent funding. And again, while these funds are currently unspent, they are fully obligated, and we expect we expect that they will be obligated before the expiration date. Our offender management system, the department is leveraging data technology to better track offender behavior and outcomes, which allows for more effective allocation of resources, closer monitoring of compliance, and proactive responses to risk in the field. While the department has received nearly $1.5 billion budget, excluding COVID dollars, less than 1% is funded by federal dollars, and none of TDOC's programs are dependent on federal funding for their existence or functionality. Again, I want to thank Governor Lee and the General Assembly for their continued investment in our correctional officers. The funding you've provided allowed us to make significant improvements in our staffing numbers. Since fiscal year 20, the General Assembly has made significant investments towards the funding of our correctional officer pay, which, counting fiscal year 26, totals over $85 million. Last year, with your support, we implemented compensation adjustments and retention initiatives that have made a measurable difference in stabilizing our staffing levels at several facilities. Since our salary increases went into effect in February, we've been able to offer an attractive salary package to our security staff. As a result, we've seen a 29% decrease in the total number of correctional officer vacancies statewide. The vacancy rate at most of our facilities is now under 15%, and that has helped us reduce the amount of overtime for our staff and enable the department to eliminate the augmentee program at all but 2 of our facilities. Today, there are just over 450 correctional officer vacancies statewide, and more than half of those are concentrated at 2 of our facilities. So in closing, Chairman, again, I want to thank the members of the committee for the support, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner. We do have a couple different questions. One thing, and just one brief question that I have that you mentioned, the offender management system. What is the completion date on that, Commissioner?
December, it looks like December of 2026.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. First on the list, let's go to Chairman Halsey. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, and your folks for being here. And I got to say publicly, the last time we were in front of this committee, I had asked several questions of you, and you were very responsive, fixed a lot of the things I was worried about. You came to my office 2 different times. We discussed some of this and hammered some of this out. In this latest issue with Drummond, I'd sent you a letter and asked for about 4 or 5 pieces of information, very timely to get it back to me. I want to tell you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have some questions. Recently, the Discipline Oversight Committee was in front of a board here, and they said that they did not have full access to Thomas. Do they have access now or not?
So there are some screens that they needed that we've been working with them to try to get the access that they need. We've actually had them come over to the department and help us in our department on taking the release credits. So we're working through those issues to get them the full access that they need.
Okay, do you anticipate a time when that'll be?
I don't have that, but I can get back to you on an exact date and time.
Okay. Dealing with community corrections, in 2020, the cost per day for community corrections was $5.22, with a projected caseload of 7,743. Since that time, the cost has jumped up to $12.15 a day, which is over twice as much, and with a caseload of down to 3,337. So of course, that prompts the question, why does it cost more and you got less work?
Well, I don't know if we have less work, but I will defer to AC Murtha on that question.
Well, the cost per day would have gone up simply because, as you said, we have less participants. We're still spending the same amount of money. We've always been obligated the $13.8 million for the program. It's just if the judges are sending less people to the programs, it's going to have the cost per day increase.
Okay, I might come back to that, but thank you.
Sure.
I'd like to give you a timeline here, just a second. In November 2020, Cleotha Henderson was released out of the penitentiary. That's before you came here, Commissioner. He was released out of penitentiary 4 years early and murdered and kidnapped Eliza Fletcher. That generated an ad hoc committee meeting, which generated the appointment of a bill, created a bill that would make an oversight committee over sentencing credits. And that was signed into law in May of 23. I think you came on board in January of 23. And after that, the focus of this committee, and I'm assuming your sentencing credit system, is supposed to be for the protection of the public. And somebody we're going to release to the public, what's the risk of them harming people? And Mr. Drummond, in this case, not too long ago, between July of 23 to May of 24. In 11 months' time, Mr. Drummond committed 9 Class A offenses. Here they are: possession of cell phone 5 times, possession of a deadly weapon 3 times, possession of or selling drugs 2 times, possession of contraband 5 times, possessions of security threat or whatever that means 1 time, and the big one, attempted homicide. 9 Class A's. And somehow in that makeup, he managed to earn 98 days of good behavior credits and 83 days of program credits in that same amount of time. And your agency, whoever is responsible for the removal of sentencing credits, only took 30 days of credits away from him. And as a result of that, he was released 5 months early, and you released him on a detainer, which sent him to Lake County, I think we talked about. He gets out, post bond gets out, and he murders 4 people. There are several things about that really concerns me and concerns the public too. They do not understand how that happened. They do not understand, particularly with the amount of experience that you have, how in the world that took place. And so I would like you to address that, and then I have a couple more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner, you're recognized.
Yes. I'll have Chief of Staff talk about the good credit types, but I will add a few comments after that.
Chairman Halsey, thank you for your questions. What happened with Mr. Drummond is a tragedy, and the department obviously takes every release very seriously. Mr. Drummond was transferred to Lake County pursuant to the detainer and was, after he expired his sentence at the department. Prior to the sentencing credit change in 2023, TDOC rarely took sentence credits away from any inmate, regardless of the type of disciplinary that took place. And changing the system of how that happened within the department was very cumbersome and has taken some time. And it was an elaborate change to the way that those credits were taken in the sentence management field. And it took a while to get that really up and running. As you can imagine, with each discipline having to go through a variety of processes and procedures and then to be approved, it frankly just took quite some time. That is now very robust. Prior to 2023, I think the department regularly took in the single digits of sentence credit days away from individuals, and now regularly takes hundreds of thousands of days. And that can simply take the department staff some time in order to accomplish that. As it relates to Mr. Drummond, there were credit dates that were taken away. In retrospect, obviously, perhaps more could have been taken away, but we can't necessarily always know what is going to happen. That's the danger of the business, both the department and the court system sits in, is having to predict that kind of unpredictable behavior.
Thank you for your reply. Under your old matrix, when this happened, you could have taken 9 months just on one Class A with no priors. You could have taken 12 months if you had a prior, and you could have taken 15 months. And at the end of the day, of course, like I said, there was 30 days. I'm not saying that's your fault. I'm just saying under the old system, that could have been done. And 30 days, of course, just, seems unreal.
Commissioner, you're recognized.
I'm not going to shrug off that the department could have done a better job. We could have done a better job. We realized that our matrix wasn't strong enough, and that's why we reformed the matrix to take these days, as well as working with the IDOB and now having a spreadsheet on every day that's taken off, and then we go back and forth to make sure that the days are taken. So we could have done a better job in that area, and now that we've refocused our management team on those sentence credits and those type of individuals, I feel stronger now that that situation won't occur again.
Chairman Halsey.
I sincerely hope you're right. I really do. And by the way, Commissioner, I'm not here to beat you over the head, all right?
No, I know. I'm just saying, I know we could have
done.
done a better job in that area.
Yeah.
We recognize that, and we're trying to put the corrective actions in place to prevent.
Before you got here in 2016, this legislature passed a bill called the Public Safety Act. And it did several things, but it was built on two premises. One is when we release people back into the public, we want people to be safe. We want the public to be safe when we turn these inmates loose. And in order to do that, we have to look at recidivism, and we have to look at programming. And then we also have to look on the other side of the discipline side of what you're going to deal with bad behavior. That's how that bill was written. And we pumped a lot of money into that, a whole lot of money. The programming side, I haven't found anything in your materials on your abstracts to indicate how many seats, programming seats that you have in the institutions. The closest I can get is 2023. In 2023, you had a little less than 5,000 program seats in all the penitentiaries with all the programs. And of course, these are evidence-based programs. They have to be. Can you tell me the number of program seats that you have today?
I will have to get back to you. I don't know that exact number, sir. I will say the one thing we did realize that our wait list and education issues needed to be addressed. So when we implemented the inmate tablets throughout the state for both state and privates, we've put on the education and religious material there for the inmate population. And since the implementation of those tablets, 1 million education and religious certificates completed by our inmate population. So I'll have to get back to the exact programming seats. I don't have that information handy with me today, but I will get it to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Let me tell you why that troubles me so much is some of these programs that are absolutely essential. We spend all this money to do risk assessments. And you get a risk assessment that says, particularly like Drummond, the last one you did, and you do one every year on every inmate, you have to. The last one that Drummond had said it flagged him, said he's extremely violent. What troubles me about that is a lot of these programs take a year to go through it. Well, you got a wait list of thousands, some of them who will expire their sentence before they ever get to go on a wait list. It's like you got 25 seats available and 750 candidates who have put in applications to go to class. That's why I'm so interested in how many program seats that you have. One other thing, and I'm through. In that program, the public safety program, the outcome is what we're looking for. People don't mind so much investing more money if they know that the outcome is going to improve things. But if we can't show that there's improvement, then it's very hard to sell that. And so I'm just sharing with you the way it looks to me that it's trending. When you look at recidivism, your abstract report came out and said that it was difficult to determine, but it wasn't for me. You look at it, it's trending up. If you do your 1-year return rates and look at those, it's trending up. Not just recidivism, but violence in the prison. This year, you had 865 assaults on staff. That's more than it has ever been, ever. You had 804 assaults on inmates. That's more than it has ever been. Your homicide rates are up. Your suicide rates are up. your attempted suicide rates are up. Now, like I said, people don't mind investing money. Taxpayers are willing to do that when the outcomes are good. These scare me, to be honest with you, Commissioner. That's my last question.
Well, I'm not saying that they don't scare me as well, especially the way you framed it there. I will say on the staff assaults, I think our problem with the staff assaults is we just identified a staff assault and not the seriousness of the staff assault. Although I'm not discouraging a staff assault as a staff assault, it's significant either way. I feel strongly about some of the operational things that we've put in place in our prisons to provide a safer environment for the staff and the inmates, and leveraging technology in that way to assist us. Our prison population has grown, so I do see some of those percentages going up. But we always look at every incident and see what we can learn and see what we can change to try to prevent that from occurring. I'm not discounting those numbers. I've saw that abstract, and I know that the numbers, and I also know that the recidivism rate went up a few percent from the last one. And we've been talking about things that we can do differently and looking inward and saying, how can we change some of the things that we're doing? Because obviously we don't want to tick upwards. We want to get those numbers down. But I do feel from visiting, I've made over 40 site visits this year, and I do feel that we operate safe and secure prisons. I've walked through the units. I've talked to the inmates and talked to the staff, and I feel confident of what we're doing. But we'll always look at those numbers and see how we can improve.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Representative Gant, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, thank you for being here, you and your team. Under the previous two commissioners, the community corrections programs underwent some significant changes. This year, a new RFP was released, and actually most of the programs ended up with a decrease in funding when you all had actually encouraged them to increase funding for things like staff, provide more service. Clearly, it was complicated. Have you all created a plan for the next RFP since the one that they currently are operating under, where they receive these budget cuts, is only for 1 year?
So, sir, we didn't cut their budget. What we did was we spent the monies that we were allotted, was somewhere around $13.6 or $7 million. The bids came in 71% over what they were the previous contract, and that was due to their staffing increases. Although we've encouraged them to pay their staff, we didn't encourage them to cut the programming. There is, in my budget coming up for the future, I have not increased the funding in that area. I have remained it as is. And what we're trying to do is look at ways that we can support them in other means. But we didn't cut any budget. We just spent the money that was allotted in our budget, and we tried to spend it and give it to all counties that put in. We actually went from 62 counties to 70 some counties for coverage. So we extended the coverage, but it reduced some of their staffing because of the monies that we allotted.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Chairman Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for being here. Obviously, what Chairman Hulsey was talking about, Austin Drummond's, that took place in the district that I represent. And obviously, there's lots of emotion about that. One of the things that I'm getting lots of questions about is how did he have so much access to all of the different things and that he had in his cell? You know, he living it up like a king. Or at least that's the perception that we see on social media. He had the cell phones, he had the PlayStations, or it appeared as such. What is it that you and your office, the department, is doing to make sure that that is not replicated across the state?
Well, thank you for the question. In reference to those pictures that you saw, they were not out of our prison. Those were in some of the county jails. We don't have wooden floors, and we don't have shirts that say TDOC Supermax inmates, or they don't have Xboxes in their cells. So those pictures were not from Northwest facility. So I don't know where they were generated from or where they came from, but we have access, like on our tablets, the inmates have access, bundle packages to see movies, to get music, but it's all paid for. It's revenue-based, based on them, but we don't provide that to them in their cells.
And I'm happy that you were able to clarify that, maybe set the record straight. You said earlier that you had 70,000 inmates that were either incarcerated or you were supervising. Is that right?
There's over 20,000 incarcerated, and there's 70,000 on some form of probation or parole.
What would you say how many beds do you have, if you want to use that term, beds, to actually be in prison if we needed, how many beds do you have available across the state
To
incarcerate?
Open for
Open
beds?
beds. If you were 100% capacity, what is that number?
Around 25,000.
Okay, and then I guess my concern is you've got 20,000 that we're using, so we've got 5,000 we're not using. We've got lots of local jails that seem to be bearing the burden for a lot of TDOC inmates. And I'm hearing lots of county commissioners talking about, well, our jail's fixing to be derated. And is that a problem that you're seeing across the state, or is that just a problem I'm hearing in my part of the world?
No, I think that's an accurate statement. I get calls from obviously members of the General Assembly, district attorneys, sheriffs throughout the 95 counties to take their inmates. We are actually on pace to take more inmates this fiscal year from the county jails than the previous. Last year, we took over 5,000 inmates from the county jails. So far this year, we're a little over 4,000 that we've taken from the county jails. What we try to do is, and we're going to be implementing this new system that helps us move them fairly and equitably through all the 95 counties. But a lot of times from the bigger counties, we try to focus on their needs, and we try to move them as fairly and equitably as we can when you're dealing with 95 counties.
Okay. Now, going back to the Drummond's case, there's lots of talk about he was running a drug ring inside the prison there, and they were dropping drugs using drones. I mean, obviously, Senator Jackson and I've spent some time talking about this. We've heard these rumors going on for the past few years about different prisons, or they're using different technologies to do that. If that's the case, what efforts are we seeing? And you don't have to give specifics, but what is the effort level to make sure that this is stopped, and how, and what can we do as the General Assembly to help facilitate that? Because this is a problem, apparently.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So what we do on some of our things is to mitigate it. We do a lot of area searches and ground searches where we suspect drone drops, and when we see them. Now, what I have put in my for my budget request this year is about $2 million for a drone detection device over all of our prisons. We met with a vendor, and without getting specifics, I think it will help us dramatically in identifying drone detections and drops in the locations to prevent that stuff from coming in. And also some of the other things we've just implemented is electronic mail. All of our inmate letters now go to a centralized location. They get opened, digitally scanned back to the inmate's PIN number, held for 48 hours for us to read to see if there's any criminal activity. So now our staff don't have to deal with fentanyl, a powdery substance, or inmates can no longer send in drug-laced paper to another inmate. So that's something we just implemented going forward here this month.
Okay, that sounds pretty exciting. Last two questions, I think. As far as getting fully employed, as far as Northwest, I think we're about 75, 80% as far as the employees, last I heard. What's the plan going forward to make sure that you have the COs that you need to fully staff these prisons, especially in the rural parts of the world like I'm in?
Well, great. Another great question. Actually, in your district, we're doing much better at Northwest.
You are. That's correct.
Yes, we are doing much better in Northwest. I can have AC Stanford can give you the actual numbers of Northwest and some of our efforts that we've been doing on recruitment and retainment of our staff in TDOC, if you'd like.
We won't do that now, but I just you've got a plan that you're working and trying to push forward.
And
obviously
in your
where we
district, in your district, we actually have a very good retention rate at Northwest. Once we get them in there, we're having more success of keeping them than we've had before.
And obviously
we were actually able to open another housing unit at Northwest as I've been commissioner than they did before. So we actually, with the addition of the staff, we were able to open up more beds to put inmates in.
And I guess that will help morale. They're not having to pull as many doubles and the overtime, and just one thing leads to the next.
Yes, anytime you can increase the staff to inmate ratio, it definitely will help morale and provide a safer environment.
and then my last question there, Chairman Hicks, is have y'all considered bringing in another group outside of Department of Corrections to actually do the vetting of individuals as they go in? Maybe let's just say the Department of Homeland Security, that they do the checking of individuals as they're coming in and out to maybe keep the contraband out so that they don't have, I don't want to say crooked COs, but at the same time, I'm going to say crooked COs.
Yeah, well, we go through a robust background check through, is it TBI? Yeah, through TBI right now. So we do that. I mean, we do get dirty staff, and when we're aware of them, obviously we prosecute them to the full extent of the law. I don't know if another organization, they will do the same background check as other law enforcement because everybody uses basically the same system. But if there's another entity that we can use, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'm not aware if I can do that.
I'm not making a suggestion, just curious. Thank you, Chairman Hicks. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Next on the list will be Representative Garrett. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. My question is going to revolve around the Reentry Success Act of 2001. So I don't know who would be the best person to respond to that. But as you all know, in case the public's not aware of that, that was an act passed in 2021 that revised several provisions as it related to release and probation, the programs we provide to our inmates so they don't reenter into the system, right? Which is exactly what our goal should be for folks that experience our corrections department, that they shouldn't want to return. And they need certain programs and activities to help that. So since fiscal year 2022, over $22 million has been spent on this program, and there's been 109 positions that's been provided for those initiatives. So my three questions are going to relate to those facts. So after now that the law has been in place for 4 years, my question is, how has recidivism been impacted by this piece of legislation? And how does today's recidivism rate compare to what it was in 2021 when the act was passed? So whoever's got that answer, I would appreciate that. I've got some follow-up questions after that.
Yes. I'll defer that over to Ms. Finkel.
Good morning, Assistant Commissioner Gail Finkel. Thank you for the question. There is a two-part answer. A lot of the positions created relate to my colleague in community supervision, but I will share with you that part of that was the opening of new DRCs, and there are approximately 26 new positions created for the
Can you say what DRCs
Day
are?
Reporting Center.
Thank you, just in case, because I didn't know what
We have
that
a lot of
was, and I'm
acronyms.
sure there's
I
someone
know.
out there that might not know what that is.
That's right. I also wanted to touch on programming and the fact that we have doubled our programming with partners like TBR and TCAT and the CEI funds that we're very grateful for, which also support additional education and programming. Through the violent reduction funds that we received, we were able to institute CBIP in cognitive behavior intensive programming in every one of our facilities with the exception of special needs. We've also instituted victim impact and parenting inside and out and a lot of other programs that we didn't have prior to 2023 or 2024. And with the institution also of the tablets and the extension of programs available to inmates while they're in their cells, it's difficult to count the number of programming seats we have because they've grown pretty significantly. But as far as the Reentry Success Act, we have added violent crime reduction programs. We are working on our wait list. We are adding programs that enable more access to reducing cognitive behavior and also TCOM or substance use, mild or severe. And that has all been enabled through the funding that came from that act with addition of other funding.
Okay. So in specific terms of what the rate was in 2021, do you have an idea of how that rate's been impacted? It sounds like some of the programs you're doing are working, but do you
Recidivism
know when
rate?
it was in 2021 versus what it is today?
No.
Okay. Can you get that to us?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then two other questions. $10.5 million of that particular that investment for this program went directly to local jails that implement these programs for the benefit of and to support the reentry success. So my question is, how many jails are receiving this on an annual basis? I don't know who this may be. I'm looking at you like you may know this.
I have it.
And then has everything been spent? Are there any unspent dollars of that $10.5 million?
There are a lot of unspent dollars of that $10.5 million, but it is going to a good cause. There are 27 county jails currently participating. in 24 counties. So 27 jails in 24 counties have been accredited and are participating. They have to go through an accreditation, and they also then have to make application for the stipend. Some of them don't want to do the paperwork, but we are working on a little campaign to try to reach out to them and instigate them to act. This money benefits them, and I think they're starting to see that, especially with the increase in the stipend that happened this fiscal year. And I think we looked at the OCJP numbers earlier too, where they have supported 32 county jails have already started to participate, and we're at 27. So we're all tracking, along the same path. But no, we have not spent all of the $10 million.
Well, then you lead me to my next question. If it's unspent, do those dollars go back to the general fund, or do you hang on to that for other purposes? Where does the money go when it's unspent?
I believe that money is carry forward. Sorry, now my peer over in fiscal, because I don't want to give you a hard line answer when I'm really not sure.
Okay.
If we have specific money that's in certain funds, it does carry forward, but any of the Reentry Success Act money, we would have used it all for different programming. We wouldn't not use any of it. It was all used.
Okay, so technically, if it's unspent dollars, then there'll be no reason to increase your ask for that same program if you've got money left over.
Would
that be fair?
In the CCIP, correct. That is carryover funds. It's not part of reentry success if it's bucketed separately.
Okay.
Specifically for this initiative.
Actually, the CCIP funds, they're funded through the State Prosecution Fund. And this year, with the increase from $3 and $6 to $6 and $12 for the 2 tiers, we anticipated our increase in cost would be $2.7 million. And actually, right now, we've already spent over $3 million in the stipend so far this year, and we're anticipating spending not quite $7 million but at the end of the year. So we did ask for an increase in stipend funding just because we've seen many more jails sign up for contracts wanting to get this stipend now that you guys raised it.
Great.
So it's been very successful.
All right. Thank you. My last question, you have highlighted what's been successful under the program. There's always challenges that comes with that. So if you could wave a magic wand, so to speak, how would we improve it? What are your challenges? What does the program look like forward, and what can be improved?
I think our greatest challenge has been space, because we can implement more programs and we don't know where to put them because we're running out of classroom space. But again, with our partnership with TBR, we've been very fortunate that we're now looking at distance learning and AV equipment that will enable the teachers. You can take your class now from your laptop and then get tutoring in the classroom, and the teacher can be on the screen. That's also going to help with some of the issues we've had with instructors who are afraid for their safety coming into the prison.
Okay.
So we have some things in play, and we hope that that's the secret.
Knock on wood. Thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for your answers to my questions. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, that's all I've got.
All right. Thank you. Next on the list, Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner and team. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for the help that you gave with a constituent of mine. I'm sure the Commissioner and some of you all may remember her, Vanessa Knowles. She has a son that was incarcerated. He's still incarcerated, was sick, ill, and she was concerned about his health and, wanted some answers. He was in the hospital and things like that. And you all were very good in helping, relieve that mother's concern about her child. And she said, he needs to serve his time. I just want to know how he's doing. And she was, really wanting to have him move closer to home so she could visit the boy, help him get, encouraged in doing the remainder of his time. And some of you may have heard of this. This was a car accident in Arkansas on I-55, 8-car pileup where the driver fell asleep and hit. Well, she was one of the people in that accident that passed away. And it has devastated the community because she's such a community person, loving person, evangelist, gospel singer and all of that. So keep her family in your prayers. But I did want to thank you all for all the help that you gave that family and gave her. You all got to move closer to home. She was able to visit him and all of that. And, so we're all encouraged with all the things you all did to make the family feel better about his health and things like that. So thank you all so much. And I just want to share that story with you to let everybody know that you know, when families have concerns that you all do respond. It's like, you know, we call and you all, I got out of it. Once you all, you know, talked with her and helped her, she was pleased. She could call and get responses. So I think people need to know that side too of the work that you all do. So I appreciate it. The family appreciates it. And I just wanted to share that bit of story with you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Leader Camper. Next on the list, Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Just a few things. Obviously, something we've talked about for years now is the open positions that we have in corrections. Of course, if you look at the percentage is improved. The total number of people is down from 800. We're around 400 now. I recognize in your presentation you told us that that it's somewhere around just over 400 now that's there. The question is what determines, Chairman Hicks shared with me about how inmates are able to get tablets now to help with education purposes and things like that, which is something that was unusual to me. But how do we determine the number of COs that are required for a jail? For instance, are we following some federal or state guideline that says how many correctional officers that we have to have? I recognize it's very difficult to employ these folks. We've paid independent third-party folks over the years to try to help us fix this problem. But I guess the question is do we, with the onset of technology, our oversight through the current staff that we have, do we need 400 and some odd additional correction officers, or is that a statutory requirement?
So what we do is we call it a complement analysis. So we go into a bit like for example, a housing unit. Obviously that has to be staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's a mathematical formula for that. So one staff member would equal 3 positions because you'd have to have the relief and the other 2 shifts. So you go building by living arrangements and see what needs 24-hour coverage and what needs 5-day coverage. And there's a mathematical formula. And what we've been doing is that complement analysis at every one of our state facilities to give us what that base is what we need as correctional officers. So there's been a formula that's been in place here that the state used and that I brought with me, and they're almost very similar. So there is a formula that determines the number of staff.
The formulary, though, is when was the last time we changed our formulary? Or is it's not what I'm hearing you say? It's not a statutory requment, either federal or state.
No, it's just a formula that's been in place. So like if this was a housing unit, we know you need this many staff based on the formula because you have to have coverage 24 hours a day. So it would be considered a 7-day post, where a visiting room might be just a 5-day post with no relief because it's just there Monday through Friday or Tuesday through Saturday, whenever you have your visiting, and then relief factors are built in. But it's been used for the 37 years I've been doing this, and it's pretty accurate on the number of positions that you need.
I recognize that. This body was talking about how when we look back a certain number of years that we have to look on microfilm to look for data as it relates to finance. I get that, but I would say that corrections has changed a lot in 37 years. I just don't know if we need to do a deep dive and figure out what the actual number is, and instead of relying on formularies in order to do that, particularly since we don't have a statutory requirement to do that. Mainly because, as Chairman Holsey said, you know, the citizens don't mind paying the money when the services are good and recidivism rates down. I think we just might need to look at that and see. It was stated earlier that you're housing some of our county prisoners in state jails. I know that's kind of unique to me. I thought the county jails were holding state prisoners. That's what happens in my district in some cases. My question is, do county governments pay the state that same per day rate whenever we're housing their inmates?
I'm not aware of what county inmates we're housing. I know where we take the state inmates out of the county jails.
Okay. I must have misunderstood. I thought that maybe some older jails that didn't have the capacity were asking the state to take their prisoners. But what I'm hearing you say is that's not the case.
No, we get requests to take our state inmates out of the county jails, and that's who we've
Okay.
been putting in our jails.
Okay. The reimbursement rate to county jails, as you know, we increased a couple of dollars several years ago. I think 3 years ago, we increased that because of the burden that our counties were taking on. I do notice that when it comes to finance, I always look for outliers, whether it's employment rates or open positions. But it does seem that statistically speaking, that when it comes to reimbursement rates, we're always overestimating what the reimbursement rate would be for those county jails, as much as 25% on average annually. I guess my question is, from a finance perspective, why are we not expending all the dollars that we're appropriating to pay for those prisoners to be in county jails? And do you need that much money when it's just being reverted on an annual basis?
Yeah. Yes, I can answer that. We do need that funding. Like I said before, the funding to reimburse the county jails and to pay for the stipend comes from the state prosecution fund.
Mhm.
From that, we also pay for clerk costs, victim witness fees, inmate transportation, and emergency hospitalizations for any inmates that are in the county jails. So if you look back at the history of the state prosecution fund, it's gone up and down over the years when, our population was down. Then after COVID, it jumped up a bunch, the population in the county jail. So we got an increase, then it dropped again. Money got taken back out from it. So the fund is adjusted over time, but whenever we put in any request for additional funding, we look at the average number of inmates that's been in the county jails and what the population projection reports show. And we never ask for more than what we need. But I know historically there was one year, and I don't remember which year, I'm sorry, that money had been taken out, and then we had either a huge amount of medical bills or an increase in the county jail inmates. And we ended up not having money, and we had to get a supplemental funding of, I think it was $20 or $30 million towards the end of one year. So I think that's just why we've always made sure we're doing, not overestimating, but making sure that we do good projections to make sure we do have enough funding so we don't have to ask for supplementals.
Thank you. I'll look into it. I'll share you some of the data that I have, but it looks like we're setting aside about 170 million, 175 million a year in local jail reimbursements, and we're spending on average since 2021 of maybe 125 million. So it's interesting that there's this divergence between the two. Back to the employment and those open positions, I did notice that we in 2018 that we had an exit survey system that we put in place. Obviously, in my business, I have to ask, why did you leave us? And it's very important as it relates to how I change my business model to make sure that my employees are retained. I did notice, though, that according to your November 2024 report, there were 387 officers who decided to end their employment with TDOC, and of those 387, 9 did an exit interview. How do we understand better how to reemploy or to employ people when we don't fully understand why they're leaving, when we're not getting even a 5% exit survey success rate? Can somebody tell me what we're doing? Because that's, quite frankly, unacceptable.
Thank you for the question, Assistant Commissioner Heather Stanford, Human Resources. And I absolutely agree with you. There's not a lot we can go on with that low of a response rate. And so over the past year, we have created and we now have in place retention managers and retention specialists. And so I have 2 statewide managers that oversee retention now, and we are setting up, we've already hired the positions. They're starting in the next couple weeks. one specialist at every facility and one for each region of our supervision districts. But what those managers have already been able to do is when we get notice of an officer leaving, they are calling the officer or sitting down across from them. And so we are getting real-time responses now that I'm happy to gather and share with you, where we're able to take more frequent, more timely action in addressing some of those issues. And we've seen, a really great decrease in turnover that I think this retention team's really impacting now.
Okay. Finally, I noticed that you transferred 25 positions from your security floating work crews that I'm assuming are unnecessary, or you did something different there. Where those 25 positions that you were they reclassified? They were floating work crew positions, I guess. Were they reclassified, and what were they reclassified as?
As far as I know, we still have all of our floating crew positions, so I might need to see the specific positions, but we still have our floating crews working today.
Well, they were 25 of 20 of the 25 were transferred or were coming from the Northwest Correctional Facility, which has a pretty high turnover rate there.
So what that is just a change of department ID. The floating crews were set up to report to central office so they can be deployed wherever needed. We've been using those at Northwest and still do, but they're located in central office department ID now because that's their reporting structure.
Okay.
But that's just so they can be used at any facility if the needs change.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Sparks, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, I've got a text from my mayor. This has been one of the biggest issues about the jail reimbursement. They're looking at building an 1,800 unit facility. I asked them how much it'd be, $400 to $500 million. That was 4 or 5 schools just a few years ago. Totally unsustainable. Commissioner, I often said we can't legislate and incarcerate our way out of problems. And I had you in office a few months ago, and we were talking about the power of music, of all things. And I see here where Jelly Roll, of all people, is investing 100 acres of his own land into a drug rehab campus. That's leveraging the private sector, leveraging someone who has been there, done that. Can you elaborate on the good news of where you are trying to plant the seeds of change in these inmates' lives? What 90% of them is going to be out here in the general public in the next few years. Can you share what you share with me?
Yep. Well, I think we are trying to change, well, not only the way we do with the program, but I know you're very interested in the music. And we just recently had another musical concert at one of our private facilities at South Central, where we had Breonna Calhoun, we had Kix Brooks and Chase Rice perform at the facility. We also had Tim Tebow at one of our other core civic prisons in Trousdale. So we're always looking for ways, just not just through education, but through music and other ways to branch out to our inmate population. I would say I really would defer to Ms. Fenkel, who oversees a lot of our programs, and use of our tablets. Our tablets have increased the number of programs that we've made available to our inmate population, both from an educational standpoint and a religious standpoint. The tremendous reaction from the inmates has been super positive, and it's been just a real game changer in the whole programming of our inmate population. And I don't know if Ms. Finkel wanted to expound on some of the specific programs.
Sure. Gail Finkel, Assistant Commissioner, Rehab Services. There's so much great content on the tablets that we try to track as much of it as we can as it relates to breaking down their consumption habits. So the top things that they are looking for, in addition to some music and entertainment, are self-help, jobs and finance, and educational programming and academics. And while that's great, and we've had 1.5 million completions since the inception and over 182,000 certificates earned, We also want to push our own envelope and stretch our thinking to include private sector partners. So we have implemented the addition of some Men of Valor content onto the tablets. We're working with former incarcerated individuals and musicians that the commissioner mentioned, Brianna Calhoun and others, to create podcast series and other content for how they made it and what their words of wisdom are for the inmate population. And we will be working on special TDOC podcast content with, the faces of those that you've mentioned who have made it on the outside to give everybody hope.
I was impressed with our chairman earlier today, if I could, Chairman. It's not his numbers, it's not as being very analytical, is that he recently visited a prison. I mean, I don't know how many people up here have visited a prison. I have. And speaking of inmate deaths, I had to make a call to a mother that we happen to know. Her son had passed away in prison a few years ago due to an overdose. And I remember her calling the office, my assistant Marvin. She wanted to get his clothes. And it was an interesting quote she gave us. She said, she told my assistant it was good to just get the scent of her son. When I see the private sector, like Steve over here at Right Road Ministries, he asked me the other day, I was dropping off some clothes over there, talking to some guys, and he says, Mike, can I ask you for a favor? And I don't like when people ask me that because you never know what people are going to ask you. He said, Mike, I got in trouble when I was 18 years old. He had a felony. I said, man, how old are you? He said, I'm 56. Well, he runs a whole halfway house. I said, how many men you have here? He said, 36. How many women? 14. He's changing 50 people's lives. So I called Probation Pro. I noticed her customer service reviews on Google is 1.4 out of 5. That's an F in my book. And they were clueless when I said, hey, this guy needs to get some help. Where can he go? They were clueless. Finally, they got me in touch with an attorney who did have some clues, who got on the phone with Steve to turn his life around. But one final thought, these issues as a former county commissioner has always been on my mind because they're expensive. It's expensive to build a $500 million jail for our county. We can't do it because that's 3 schools we're not going to be able to build, and we're dealing with the fastest growing county in the state of Tennessee. But Bernard Salandy, some of y'all know Bernard Salandy. He was our chief deputy over the jail. And I'd say, man, dude, what is the silver bullet? Just what's the silver bullet to change these men's lives? He said, it's the faith-based. It's the faith-based community. So thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, staff. You probably have the toughest job in the state of Tennessee. You're not going to get much good press, let's face it. But thank you for trying to change lives, and shout out to Men of Valor for doing that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Shaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here. I probably have learned a lot by having 2 facilities in my district over the years about the nature of what you do, Commissioner, and I can tell you it's very critical. And we can all sit here with our own ideas and thoughts and throw out ideas, but I want to ask, do you think we would be better off if we still had the work initiative program where inmates couldn't spend 24 hours a day watching TV and getting in trouble, but actually doing something?
Well, anything to keep an offender busy, but also providing a meaningful skill that they can use to better themselves and better their community is something we would support. I'm not aware of the work program. That might have been something prior to my time here, so I can't comment on something I'm not aware of, but I would be willing to have a discussion about it.
Well, I'm sure it's people like us sitting up here on this committee were the cause of maybe doing away with the work program. And I can see both sides of it, but I do think that when you don't have anything to do but watch TV 24 hours a day, whatever else you might do, I think it just gives you more time to get in trouble than it does if you were busy doing something. And I think when the work release program when we had it, I think we were better off because inmates had to go out and do something during the day, and they work 8 hours a day. That's pretty tired. So some of them didn't feel like getting in too much trouble at night. I'm just saying, and I'm not blaming you because you were not the cause of that, but that may be something we need to look at, how inmates could partner with the state of Tennessee, save the state of Tennessee a lot of money. Some could work for TDOT, some could work for different departments.
Sure.
And if we had the people to look over them and guard them and keep them safe, I just think that may be something we need. I know it's not a popular subject, but it may be something we need to look at doing to help your staff out, because to just sit for 24 hours a day.
So if I could comment on that, I wouldn't say that's a complete characterization of our offender population. I mean, we do have TriCore, so we do have our factories inside of our prisons where they're learning a life skill. I think we have a very robust vocational trade programs throughout our facilities. And as you and I know, when we've been to tour and we saw the gentleman up there at Whitefield Harmon building the benches for the community and doing things for the community, I think what has to happen is we are creating a workforce in our prisons. We just need the community to give these individuals that opportunity to get into the workforce, because we're putting out electricians, we're putting out masons, we're putting out skilled workers that can help Tennessee grow. Once they release and they go through their probation, parole, et cetera, somebody's got to give them that skill set that we've certified them in our prisons. And I think that's where we need. But I wouldn't characterize all of our guys as sitting around watching TV. I would say there's a percentage of that, yes. But I would say we are really focused on the education, the vocational trade, and working with TriCore. We're always trying to find new ways with TriCore. At our Northwest facility and our Northeast facility, we opened up the distribution center for commissary. It's very similar to an Amazon pick and pack system where we've had 40 to 60 inmates employed in that, where it's a valuable skill. And we're actually looking in within a year to try to employ the same thing at our Trousdale facility. So I think what we need is just a better bridge to the community leaders and businesses to help us employ the individuals as they release and look at the skill set that we're giving them as they release.
Not to belong to time, I'd like to sometimes just sit down and talk with you, and we throw out some ideas and maybe some things we could do, because I think that could ease a lot of tension in the systems if we had inmates busy, more inmates busy or doing things than just a few. But I won't belong to time today.
I welcome the discussion, Representative Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I have no one else on the list. So before we finish up, let me say this. About a month ago, I had an issue with an inmate. And so I had talked to Miss Elizabeth, if I'll say that, and Miss Ashley. And finally, I talked to the commissioner and told the commissioner, and he and I talked, and he invited me to, on one of his site visits that he just mentioned, he asked me if I wanted to go along. And at first I thought, no. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, I'm going to put myself where my mouth is. And so I made that trip down to Whiteville and over to Hardeman County prisons. And if you haven't done that, you should go do that. It will change your perspective in several different ways. And I want to say this, Representative Shaw, and this is what made me say this, is I didn't see a lot of folks just standing and sitting around. I'll say that, whether it was the woodworking shop or whether it was they were out cooking, or whether it was in the education process down there. I was really shocked. That is not what I thought I was going to go and see. And I was very impressed. I'll say that. I don't want to go back and stay, don't get me wrong, but I will say that. I was very impressed with your operation. That's all we have. So without objection, first of all, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all for being here, you and your staff. Without objection, we're going to go back into session. And without objection, we're going to stand in recess until 1 p.m. We're in recess.